Well, good evening and welcome back to the Terry McGriff Show. Just another week down. We're in the first week of February. Oh my God, Black History Month. February. It's kind of crazy. I always thought about Black History Month being in February since it's the shortest month of the year. But we're gonna just look over that. But get here. Glad to see everybody here for another episode of the Terry McGriff Show. Got my illustrious co-host, Mr. Andre L. Sullivan, sitting over there in them iHeart Studios. Andre, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. It's February. I'm looking for a Valentine. Yeah, man. I still ain't got my Bugatti. It's work in progress. You feel me?
I feel you, man. Hey, that Bugatti would be nice. I was thinking about trying to find me a Maserati. I like. There's a song I can call it's "Up in My Maserati," so I wanted to try to get me one just so I could sing that song while I'm riding in it. But man, it's been a good week. Things this month of January just flew by. Now we're all the way through the end of the NFL season, coming up to the biggest game of the year. You've got Super Bowl this week. Yesterday, Monday night, they had the little, Monday night preview. I just you just turned it off. I didn't want to see all that craziness, so I don't even know what happened last night. So I didn't watch it. They had those crazy people on there asking all kind of questions and all them different costumes and stuff like that. So I decided to opt out of that this year. What about you? Did you watch any of it?
Nah, I mean, I typically stay away from media week for Super Bowl just because it's all talk. I sent my questions in 2 weeks ago at the end of the conference championships.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get the email on the answers in a couple of days here. But yeah, man, I mean, they got to do something. It's the Super Bowl, so.
Mm-hmm. Everybody got to get their hype in. Got to get their little 5 minutes of fame on. Asking some of the craziest questions. I think they even took odds on who's gonna ask the dumbest question and to these guys. And I feel sorry for them because they do have to answer all kind of crazy questions, and their time away from their normal routine, with all the media commitments they have this year is kind of crazy. And then like I don't even know who the freak is the halftime show. Somebody called the Weekend. I thought it was a group. Just found out it was a person.
It's a person.
I guess I'm a little old, I guess, on that when it comes to that type of music. So I heard he's pretty good. So hopefully the halftime show will be good. I'm sure they'll have some other people that were not mentioned. So we'll find out what all these halftime activities. It's not going to be your normal Super Bowl because I don't think that what it's supposed to be like only 21,000 fans are allowed into the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
And then I heard they're sticking the families in the upper deck. So it's like, really? So they're getting basically the cold treatment, but at least we let you in the stadium. So this is going to be odd to be able to as this whole year was, but we'll see how it works. At least we know the matchup is going to be good on paper. The matchup is good. There's been a lot of talk about oddly enough, obviously they talk about the quarterbacks, but there's been a lot of Gronk and Travis Kelce talk this year, like they're going to be the stars of the game. I actually think it's probably going to be somebody we're not expecting that's going to probably win the MVP of the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a defensive player. It wouldn't shock me this year because everybody's expecting so much offense to be in this game, but it wouldn't surprise me one of the offensive players come out. I would put my money on somebody like JPP because Kansas City is without both of their starting tackles, so he might get a chance to eat. And then you really need Travis Kelce out in your pattern, so you can't just keep him in the block up. So they might, keep a running back in there. But then again, like you said, Damian Williams is such a back. They got a lot of good backs who you want to keep in. So maybe they'll do some creative things. I would expect a lot of screens and draws and stuff out of Kansas City this game because of the fact that they don't have their starting tackles in the game. So they'll figure out a way. Andy Reid will come up with some creative things to do and try to get some points on the board. My interest in is this to me will be a big game for Byron Leftwich, being that he's the OC for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's kind of getting some press this year because he is a coordinator, and he was one of the guys that really didn't get any interviews for a head coaching job. And Bruce Arians kind of talked him up a lot during the last few days about, he needs an opportunity to be a head coach. I always knew he was a very, very smart guy. That was one of the things about him when he was coming out of college, coming here to Jacksonville, to the Jaguars, how smart of a player he was. And he's ended up being a fast riser in the coaching ranks. So he's been a coordinator, for about at least 3-4 years now under Arians. So I think he'll get his chance here soon, Unfortunately, Bieniemy didn't get a job. I thought that was kind of a farce, but hey, it is what it is. A lot of times that's the worst thing about being a coach on these teams that go deep in the playoffs. You lose that opportunity of getting a head coaching job. So the good news is you're still on a Super Bowl caliber team. The bad news is you don't get to be the man wherever you were going to hopefully could have got a job at.
Well, I'll get into the Super Bowl, but my take on Bieniemy and Leftwich, both offensive coordinators for their respective teams. The knock on the both of them is not what they bring to the table. It's just who they were at the table with.
Mm-hmm.
And Bieniemy, kind of riding with Andy Reid, and Leftwich been at the table with Arians for most of his coaching career.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the knock on them, and not saying that they didn't earn at least an interview, but when you have coaches that you've been under their tree who have the resume that Andy Reid and Bruce Arians has, a lot of people going to question what you can do once you break that branch and leave that tree. And so that was the knock on them, and there's nothing against them. Eventually, they'll get a spot. I think Bieniemy before Leftwich, of course, but it'll happen. But as far as the Super Bowl is concerned, you said it. Those two are the guys who either they might earn them a coaching spot depending on how they coach in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at the injury report, and I thought something interesting to me. Of course, Le'Veon Bell is he's questionable. Their center Daniel Kilgore is out for the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Yeah, Demarcus Robinson, the wide receiver, is also out for the Super Bowl. And they have Deion Yelder and Sammy Watkins. Well, Deion Yelder is on IR, and Sammy Watkins has been listed as questionable for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then on the other side, Mike Evans, Jordan Whitehead, Antoine Winfield Jr., Antonio Brown, and Levante David have all been listed as questionable. But please understand, you guys, questionable just means that, they decided to keep them out of practice and they have to list the injury report. That's not saying that they will not play. But having that center out for the Kansas City Chiefs was a huge mark for me. And again, not saying that equals a loss, but interchanging your offensive line is already hard for any team, be it the Kansas City Chiefs or your local Pop Warner team. Interchanging your center is the hardest. It's not one of the hardest. It's the hardest because that snap count now changes. That the way you push your hands up on the thigh, that changes. And so that's the most interesting thing to me. AB is listed as questionable, but he did practice today with the Buccaneers. I think everyone needs to pay attention to that little piece of information more than anything else. Tom Brady has his boy back. Tom Brady's the reason why AB's in Tampa Bay. And so, he's listed as questionable because he was coming off of a healthy scratch. But if this guy is healthy, come game day on Sunday, look out. Like, really, really look out. The interesting thing also to note is that the Ndamukong Suh did not practice today. He wasn't listed on the injury report, but we don't know what that means. So he's not injured. He was just a healthy scratch for practice today. He needs to play. I understand you got. But here's the thing: Tampa Bay Buccaneers depth chart is very underrated, but there's only one Ndamukong Suh, and having him in that 1 or 3 technique changes a game. So it'll be interesting right now. And I ESPN right now has it 51% Kansas City, 49% Tampa Bay. That can fluctuate. It was actually in the reverse yesterday. That can fluctuate all the way up to literally game time. I'm not putting my coins in any basket right now because right now I'm just praying for a great game.
I'm with you. I'm praying for a great game, but the information that you just gave me, whoo, if I'm leaning anyway, I'm leaning toward the Tampa Bay because after watching the way Vita Vea performed against Green Bay and having him, and if Ndamukong Suh is playing, you can forget about running inside against Tampa Bay. I don't care who he was. He did not play against Kansas City the first time that they played. Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh are probably the most two done as together are the two strongest defensive tackles together that you can probably put together in the league right now that I know of. I mean, there's some other guys that are out there that can maybe rival them, but they're in the top 5. When I'm talking about guys that can take up blocks, not necessarily to just dominate and get in behind in the backfield, but they require you to double team them. If you don't, they will create havoc because they're not Aaron Donald type. They're a different type. They were, like I said the last week's show, they're more like your Sam Adams, Tony Saragusa of the 2000s Baltimore Ravens. Those big pluggers that will just take guys and just move guys all over the place, and you can't move them off their spot. So that's going to cause a little bit of trouble, especially if Kansas City doesn't have their starting center. And the reason he's the starter for a reason. Your backup is your backup for a reason. And you do not want your backup against those two guys. One of those would be enough, but when you got both of those guys in there together, now your guards are going to have to do some help. So there's a few things that they normally do where they can let people get away with certain things on that offensive line. They're going to have to be a little bit more creative on how they do things. And then, like I said, that means you're going to have to you might have to even play a couple of extra tight ends or something. But I will give the edge right now to Buccaneers knowing that information, especially if Ndamukong Suh is playing in this game. I knew the tackles were going to be out, and I figured you can kind of figure out a way to get some help chip on things. But if you don't have your men in the middle snapping that ball, and you only got a week to prepare for the biggest game of your life, whoa. Good luck, Kansas City. If there's anybody who can do it, I'll give it to Andy Reid. But I mean, like you said, their defense is very underrated, and they're one of the top run defenses. Yeah, Kansas City got them last game, but that was because they were able to get the ball in the air, and they got some deep passes. I think Hill had like 200 yards almost in the first half. So. But if you got guys pushing the pocket, I don't care who you are. I don't care how athletic. If you get pressure right up the middle, your athletic ability counts for nothing. You know what I mean? It's different when the guy's coming off the edge. You can kind of step around. But if they're pushing inside the pocket too, good luck with that. I'm still hoping that it's going to be a good game, but I'll give the edge to the Buccaneers right now. I know come Saturday Friday, those guys won't be standing practicing at the facility, and they'll be in the hotels. But still, sleeping in your own bed, having so much the same routine that you normally do as a home game is actually going to, in my opinion, help Tampa Bay in this game also.
Actually, not interrupt you, but they're not allowed to sleep in their own beds in Tampa. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that. I thought it was going to be in the same type of routine. Okay.
Nope. You actually still have to go to hotel.
Mm-hmm.
There in the Tampa Bay area.
Mm-hmm.
They get to stay in that hotel later than, of course, the visiting team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they still have to go to the hotel that was reserved about a year ago for the NFC champions. Just and especially now during a COVID coronavirus pandemic, yeah, the NFL is definitely they're gonna quarantine all of them for this game. The last thing they want is for, God forbid, Tom Brady to catch coronavirus 2 hours before he has to report to the stadium for the Super Bowl. So yeah, both teams still go to hotels. Both teams still have those Super Bowl routines, if you will, just as if they were not in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I was realizing that, but I'm thinking about the fact that they're in their home area and they can still kind of go and do some shot. Hopefully, maybe they're still doing them just like their visiting teams. Well, that's a good thing. And I know they were talking about this kind of just segues into that they were talking about the guys. They were actually ruling out guys who actually tested positive for corona. I know that was some news breaking about that. They were going to go ahead and eliminate those guys from the rosters if they can. So I'm sure everybody's doing everything possible to make sure that they stay corona free until this game is over. Well, I'm sure you want to stay corona free anyway, but you definitely don't want to be able to be ruled out of this game because you was in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting that coronavirus. Um, One of the things I want to talk about is some matchups. Was we were talking about, we talked about the center being out. I'm just wondering the defensive line of Tampa Bay against the offensive line of Kansas City, I think has a big significance because of all the injuries and definitely that when the center's out. Um, well, I thought the advantage was going to be that Tampa had an advantage would be there in the first place would be there, but now I definitely see an advantage where I thought that if because they didn't not knowing the center was out, I thought that they could do some things, but wow, this helps the linebacking core for Tampa Bay too. They got some fast linebackers, and they were going to need to be freed up to help out with because Kelsey's a beast right there. Kind of keeping him at bay, being able to keep your hands on him and get him from being able to get all those underneath stuff. It's gonna be interesting on that. On the opposite side, I really thought that Tampa had an advantage with their offensive line against Kansas City. I mean, they got a couple of good studs over there on Kansas City's defensive line, but the way that the Tampa's passing game has been lately, and the way they've been running the ball, I was kind of just hoping. I was thinking that Tampa was be able to do some ball movement. Actually, I was surprised how well this playoffs, how Fournette has played. I've been kind of gonna just give him a big kudos the way he played this playoffs year. And I'm sure he's glad not to be in Jacksonville now. He's like, oh, thank you for that, man. Thank you, Jacksonville, for kicking me out of there. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
No, here's the thing. Fournette actually loved Duval.
Uh,
It's interesting connection that he had with the city. To be honest with you, actually never even visiting the city before being drafted. So, nah, I mean, but anybody, whether you're Leonard Fournette or Mickens, is happy to have Tom Brady under center, regardless of where you are. So I think that's the point. The matchup that I'm looking honestly is to see is this linebacking and safety core for Kansas City against Gronk.
mhm.
And kudos to Byron Leftwich.
And Cameron Brate.
Yeah, and Cameron Brate, but more so Gronk because for the most part, during that NFC Championship, that they kept Gronk on the wraps. He honestly was a glorified fullback for most of the game, and when they needed to, they popped you one with Gronk. And so I think that the way they use Gronk is so crucial to how they do things because when they got Gronk, you thought, oh well, Gronk just go get 1,000 receptions, and that's not the case. That's not how
Hmm.
he's ever really played the game, And kudos to Bruce Arians and Buffwich to just how they use him. So with linebacking and safety core, they're going to have to come up and jam him.
Hmm.
Regardless if you think it's a run or a pass, somebody has to put hands on him coming off the line because when he gets those free releases, he kills you.
Mm. Yes, he does. And he's such a matchup problem because he's too big for your defensive backs and usually too fast for your linebackers. And what a lot of people don't really talk about is how well he catches the ball. He got great hands. I mean, I've seen him catch the ball at all kind of different angles. He can go down and get the ball, dig it out of the dirt. I mean, he's just He's so a guy his size. He's really, really, really athletic, and his body control is not what most people will think a guy his size is. And so him and they've been talking about it all week this week about Kelsey and Gronk and how great a tight ends and who's the greatest tight end of all time, and especially in this era right now. And you know, the last couple of years, let's be honest, we've had some great tight end matchups. You know, you had last year, you had Kelsey and can't even think of his name, the tight end for San Francisco. That was another good tight end, matchup when they were talking about what not necessarily playing against each other, but they both played great games. So this crop of tight ends that's been showing up in the last couple of Super Bowls has been a really good okay. Even with Philadelphia, they had some good guys over there at tight end spot. So this has become one of a premier position again. Thank God for these great athletes that have been playing ball here. But I just want to man, this is going to be a game that I'm going to definitely sit down, have me some nice popcorn, maybe a nice cold, and enjoy this because I'm really looking forward to being entertained because I think it's going to be some fireworks in this game. I don't see a 20-24 game. I'm hoping for like a 42-45 game, actually, maybe even more than that. Just, hey, watch them go up and down the field on each other, and it don't have to be, I like for it to be like maybe, 14, 14-10 at the end of the first quarter. And then, kind of a slow, slow second quarter, slow third quarter, then have the fireworks roll up at the end of the third quarter. So the game ends up really, a lot of points in the fourth quarter. I like to see something like that. So, you keep your interest. That's just me personally as a fan now, just wanting to watch some good football. That's how I like to hope it goes that way. Um, I mean, I'm happy for whoever wins. Obviously, Andy's got his, so I would love to see Bruce get one. You know what I mean? That would be great for all those guys also on the Tampa Bay staff, those coordinators over there that we talk about. And it would be a great just to see those guys, and obviously being in Florida to have another team in Florida win another championship. I think that'd be the Dolphins. Dolphins has what 2 or 3 Super Bowls, and the Bucks now would have their second. Then we'll be waiting on Jacksonville to finally get one. But but I really just hoping for it. And I think it's going to be a good game. And that segues to me into just talking about our sponsors. Want to just sit down and talk about Team Sports Weather Rec, who putting on one of our sponsors, She Car. Great company where you can go get your car directly from the auction. Also watch game films, great film sharing platform. Want to talk about them and thank them for sponsoring us again. Also, we want to everybody, we're right here on YouTube. Just go ahead and like the channel. Like this episode. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about us. We're trying to do some good things here. Give you some guys some good sports information. So just keep up. So we thank you for following us and keep up with us. Want to get back into this just by talking about, obviously today is February 2nd. We want to talk about, Black History Month a little bit, not too much time on it, because like you said last week, hopefully, we do need this month just to keep, for history, for people to observe that there were a lot of black contributors to this country and this society. But in sports wise, it's so many things that happen that a lot of African Americans already getting, recognized for. You don't want to talk about. We spoke last week about Hank Aaron, but for me, if I'm going to think about somebody in Black History Month that I wanted to just kind of think about, I like to think about a lot of the guys who did great in college football that didn't get their due. Give you example. I think one I hear all the time, one of the greatest college football players was Jim Brown, that never got a chance because of the times that where he played in, he didn't get a chance to win a Heisman Trophy. And people say was the greatest athlete and the greatest football player in college football during his day. Obviously, he showed his wares in the NFL, but he was one of the people that, because of the times at that time, was not afforded a chance to be a Heisman Trophy winner. And so I wanted to obviously he's probably considered one of the greatest football players ever, if not the greatest. And somebody would still say he's the greatest running back ever. So he was one of the people I just in the Black History Month that I wanted to recognize for his, not just his professional, but what he did in college. Plus he also played lacrosse.
For me, it's interesting that you named Jim Brown. Got done watching a movie not too long ago called A Night in Miami. And it's a beautiful film. If you got Amazon Prime, definitely go check it out. But it's interesting about A Night in Miami. Um, it's a actual event based on fictitious,
Hmm.
things going on around it. But the event was based around a meeting between four gentlemen, Cassius Clay at the time, Muhammad Ali, of course, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, who you mentioned before, as well as Sam Cooke. And the the meeting, what brought them there actually was that Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali at the time had a fight against Sonny Liston, February 25th, 1964.
Hmm.
And I don't think people, of course, that night actually, if you look at the events following all four of those gentlemen being in the room, one Jim Brown retiring from the NFL, two Sam Cooke actually was murdered later that year, and
Hmm.
then the following Malcolm X was shot and killed, and then Muhammad Ali actually later that year changed his name to Muhammad Ali, being in the Nation of Islam. So that fight was very underrated because one at the time Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay, whatever have you, was a 7-1 underdog.
Hmm.
Very young. He was only 21, 22 when that fight happened. And it was a moment in time because for a brief section during all of segregation, civil rights, and what have you, I don't think that as a country they realized that all of their attention were on two black men fighting in the ring.
Hmm.
And for a brief moment in time, I don't think we necessarily forgot about race, but it didn't matter.
Hmm.
And that's the beautiful thing that I think sports does for us. Because when it's football, in between the whistle, your skin color doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And when in basketball, when the buzzer sounds, what you look like doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Soccer, hockey, whatever sport it is, it doesn't matter because at the time, my job is to be better than you, and vice
Hmm.
versa. And that fight stood out to me the most because one, because I just got done watching the movie, but then two, because it was not the first time, but it was one of the few times in our history where we stopped caring about our outer epidermis and what it looked like, and we start looking at what it was on the inside.
Hmm. Right, I agree with you. And actually, that was also when the basically the coming out party for the young Cassius Clay when he was making that he was the greatest. And that was one of the changing of the times where you had people really starting to market themselves. He was the first great marketer as an athlete, in my opinion, in American sports history. He put himself out there to make himself more popular than he actually was. He had not only his opponents but the world believing that he was the greatest because he said it and he performed it. And I mean, he was a, one of the champ. He lost the championship three times. He had the belt three times, so that means he lost three times. So he wasn't like he was undefeated, but he became the greatest because he was also the greatest marketer. And then he showed a lot of these other athletes right now. Give you example, Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders is one of those great guys like that how to market themselves and let people know, you become outside of sports, became an icon. He became a world icon, not just a sports icon, because of how he conducted himself, some of his issues, and the way he did things. Another person, like we was while we're on this, I like to, who's not black, but I like to give a little kudos to rest his soul was the great Bear Bryant. Some of the stuff that he was trying to do to, integrate college football, and some of the things he did were while he was even at Kentucky, Texas A&M for a spell, and then at Alabama. Everybody remembers the game against USC. They kind of give him credit for trying to use that game to help integrate it into the South because of playing USC and watching Sam Cunningham run all over Alabama. They say that did more for blacks in the South than actually the civil rights movement. That was the running sports joke. But I think a lot of that what he did paving the way to let know that hey, these guys can play. We need to integrate this our sports or we're not going to be the dominant thing in here. I think give him some credit for having the foresight to do that. But he did that long before he was at Alabama too. So I'd like to give him a little kudos to that. Along with all the we spoke last week, a lot of the other guys that are in sports, your Jackie Robinsons, all those guys who went through a lot of the stuff they went through, so that people could have the things that they're doing right now. But there's so many people that you can talk about with Black history and in Black history sports. I just didn't want to keep too much time, but I don't want to do this every week this month, but I just wanted to kind of get that and talk to, give some people some recognition, some who I thought personally to me that I like to give some recognition to. So, all right, we're going to move on and let's go until the news. I think we talked about it earlier, talking about EA Sports is planning on coming back out after, I think, the hiatus since 2013, coming out with a college football game, video games. I'm not sure when it's going to be. I think it's going to be for next season, if not the year after that. Opening back up the issues for the image and likeness. I'm not sure. I know California was talking about it, and I know here in Florida it's supposed to be, if I'm not sure, June or July, somewhere in the summertime. That's going to it's going to be very interesting now that they're knowing that coming in. So we know that this image and likeness thing for all these college athletes is getting very, very close. And it's going to be very interesting. You're going to have some people be successful with this, and then you're going to have a lot of pitfalls. So I'm waiting to see how this thing plays out with EA Sports and how they handle this. I know right now there's some talk about them not having rosters right now. So we're going to see how they handle this, but we also want to see how college football and all these college teams and college handle this on the women's and the men's side of the sports world.
Well, first and foremost, the last time there was a college football from EA Sports was 2014. Denard Robinson actually graced the cover of that particular game.
Shoelace.
And I can't control what EA Sports decides to do. Of course, the whole conversation about image and likeness is going to be up. But people don't understand. EA Sports canceled the game not because of image and likeness. EA Sports canceled the game because they didn't want to have that argument with someone. And I think people have to understand, when EA Sports was doing college football, the NCAA series, there was no likeness of anyone except on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
That when we went down and played the actual video game, I know last year they actually played a video game. I believe that was the year that Florida State had just came off
Mm-hmm.
of the national championship in 2013. Number 5 from Florida State was some random dude who did look nothing like Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
If you played the game, and for that matter, Denard Robinson was actually on the cover, but number 16 for the University of Michigan was named like Charles Goodday or something or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so EA Sports most likely will still run with that motto. And so what I'm trying to say is they kept numbers. They did not keep names and likeness.
Mm-hmm.
There was no one that looked like Jameis Winston. There was no one that looked like Denard Robinson. The coaches didn't even have their likeness on there. The only thing that was used was the marketing approved stuff
Mm-hmm.
for each school. And I want to point that out.
And the fight songs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, fight songs. And it was only the marketing stuff for FCS schools.
Mm-hmm.
There was no D2. There was no D3. There was no JUCO. So if you were an HBCU fan, they stopped putting you on the game in 2012. So there are a lot of things that need to be worked out, obviously from EA on their side. But I think if you're a gamer and you love Madden, for the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years, if you played the story mode in Madden, you actually got to choose from about 8 to 10 colleges. And it was the colleges that were obviously relevant at the time. Maybe your Florida States, LSU, Texas, and those big names like that. You weren't choosing between Bowling Green and stuff like that. Sorry, but yeah, and that's what they were doing. The game coming back is less as important as what it does for the young men who play the game actually. And I think that's what they were missed. I think that's what's being missed here. Yes, the game's
Mm-hmm.
coming back. Boom, cool. We're happy about it. Of course, there's a whole image argument that's going to be had. Cool, cool, cool. But I don't think people understand how much of a thing it is for a young man to go play a game in his dorm room, put game down, close, cut console off, then go put on the actual uniform of the person and the team he was playing for. And so when you look at that, that's what that's what EA was trying to do. That was the goal from the jump,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what they're trying to bring back.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I mean, I've always enjoyed those games when I would play. I've probably played a video game in probably about 15 years. So I'm not really I'm not a video game player at all. I don't even own a console. But I do understand the importance of it. I do understand the significance of it. I do understand the significance of it to the sporting world because it does help a lot of those kids. It does bring notoriety to the sport. A lot of those kids do that with the effect of hoping that they can see themselves on that video game one day too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's also going to be interesting to see how, as we go into this next fall season, when all these rules come down, how people handle it. I want to see, who's successful with it, who makes mistakes, because there's going to be some success stories. There's also going to be some huge failures with people doing it the wrong way. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this goes. So I'm just going to stand by and watch what happens. It's going to be interesting.
Indeedly so.
All right. Well, I mean, we did pretty good, man. We got, we wanted to make sure we kept this not too long this week because we know we got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of things getting ready. I wanted to just once again tell everybody thanks for watching the show. We'll be back next week. Remember, subscribe to my channel here. Like the show. If you like it, please hit us out. I do read all the messages that are on there. Also, we're going to be down putting it on our Facebook page. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Car. Watch Game Film, Team Sports Better Rec. Also give some shout out to Laces Out Foundation and the Women's Tackle Football League. Hey guys, you got to get involved out to these things, man. We're going to do a lot of good things out there. Once again, I want to just tell everybody to be out there, be safe, enjoy the Super Bowl. Don't drink too much. Enjoy your family. Stay away from this COVID. Make sure you wear your mask. And we'll be back here this time next week, right here on the Terry McGriff Show. So you guys have a good evening.